When it comes to superhero gaming, there's really only two heroes who've actively left a major impact. Anyone want to wager a guess as to who they might be? That being said, tons of characters have had games, and a couple were even good. But there's only one hero who's always seemed like they'd just work well in a video game naturally, to me anyway, and that's Green Lantern. Now, maybe that's because I really like him, and he's cool. Or maybe it's because the game he got was so egregiously bad. Or maybe it's just the fact I like creativity in gaming. I don't know. But what I do know is that a Green Lantern game has the potential to be one of the best superhero games ever made. That being said, there are challenges. In fact, I reckon it'd be the hardest superhero game to ever make. Maybe that's why they've never done it before. Yeah, that's why. No other reason. All jokes aside, I think it's definitely doable. And it's not only doable, but I think you could make a really good Lantern game. So my goal in this video is to strike some inspiration on how a Green Lantern game could possibly work. And with that, let's get into the first topic. I think this really is the least important hurdle, but it is also a necessary one. The story effectively establishes what is off limits and what isn't in the grounds of gameplay and mechanics. There's tons to take as inspiration here. You could have a story as any of the hundreds of lanterns to already exist, or one where you play as a brand new recruit. Maybe it's facing the Manhunters, or solving crimes, or facing the Sinestro Corps. All of these could be awesome, but for the sake of this video, I believe the main focus for our theme should be creativity. And so, with that in mind, I present my idea for how the game should establish itself. I think we open up amidst a galactic war. The Green Lanterns are fighting off an incredibly powerful threat, the other Lantern Corps. This has been going on for quite a while now, and so the Lantern Corps have needed to resupply their forces, meaning a whole bunch of new lanterns have entered the fight. From here, I think we take one of two directions. Either we let the player create a character, that's honestly my preference since it fits best with our theme, but if not, then we follow Kyle Rayner. I'll explain why him later on. Okay then, our hero is sent on a mission along with a more senior member of the Corps. Maybe we could even make that like a famous named one, like Kilowog, or I'm not gonna lie, Guy Gardner would be hilarious. And they are sent to get information that could turn the tide of the war. This obviously goes wrong, getting them caught and possibly even the mentor injured. Then, when the player survives this mission, it proves the hero's capabilities and grants them a more dangerous assignment in this war. Throughout the game, you'd meet companions who can help you out in different areas, like say a Blue Lantern with a healing mechanic, maybe a reluctant alliance with a Red Lantern to escape like a prison planet or something, and he helps you in the fights and he's super aggressive. And maybe even a team up with a squadron of Star Sapphires to help push the front lines or something. I don't know. I like the idea of the main threat throughout this game sort of being the Sinestro Corps over the rest of the other bad guy lanterns like the Rage and Greed, dealing with Sinestro as our final boss of sorts. Maybe even setting up the sequel to focus on either the return of the Manhunters, or if you're ballsy enough, either Black Hand or better yet, the Anti-Monitor. Although I think if you want to make these games into like a trilogy, the Anti-Monitor could be a really good final threat. I don't want to just copy the War of the Light from the comics. I think this game should tell its own complete story. So whilst we should take inspiration from those storylines, really do something new. Okay, that's the easy part. Now for the gameplay itself. The kind of game I picture this as, I think you can make it realistically any genre, but I do think the Ghost of Tsushima meets Star Wars Fallen Order type of gameplay we've seen in a lot of modern video games, with open world free roam and special attack stances to deal with special enemy types and little stim packs to heal you and a parry system, really works best for Green Lanterns. And don't get me wrong, I hate the fact that there's a parry in every game nowadays, but this particular idea, I can envision it working well. There'd definitely be some tweaking to be made, especially to make up for the fact that flight is a feature of Green Lanterns, and for the little buddy assist system that I came up with. But overall, I think this works best, especially if you want to categorize constructs and split them up. More on that later on. Like, imagine a parry where you summon an iconic bubble or create an instant shield. You can have a heavy weapon, a light weapon, a ranged weapon, and something else. as different stances. Once again, we'll get into those in a moment as well. And then maybe the stim pack or instant heal feature could be using the lantern to quickly recharge your ring. And you can only refill it on like your ship or on Oa, for example, where your character says their oath and all the charges come back. I also reckon these kinds of games allow for the possibility of Space Cop-esque side missions where you have to resolve a murder or find a missing person. You know, the Green Lantern's actual job. Far Sector is a really good comic book, by the way, if you want to read that kind of story. There could also be some really cool missions where you slowly uncover lost artifacts and ruins that unveil the secrets of the Manhunters or maybe Old Lantern and Guardian lore. That would be awesome and would spread deep DC lore to the surface, ready for new fans. Okay, I know I've put it off for long enough. You probably want to know how I'd handle the bread and butter of Green Lanterns, the constructs. This was a tough one. In my head, there were 4 possible answers on how to handle this, and I sort of fused them all together. Okay, hear me out. The first method you could go with is the classic. It was used in the first Lantern game, and it's used in all the fighting games. You have preset inputs and they create specific constructs. Then a chain of combo inputs can end in a different construct for your character to summon. The second way of possibly doing this is basically the same as the first, but those eye-catching constructs are limited to how LEGO handle it. You walk over to set areas, press a button, and watch what it is effectively as a cutscene, creating a predetermined construct that's made for that scenario. Honestly, I think this is kind of the lamest option, but it also allows for the most cinematic moments, and a surprising amount of you initially actually voted for this version in the poll I made. Then there's the Scribblenauts approach. This was the most popular option on that poll, by the way. If you don't know already, in Scribblenauts, you can type in anything into a special notepad and it will then summon that thing into the game. Anything within reason, of course. Now, this is a puzzle game, so the prompts you type are to solve weird conundrums and it focuses on creative solutions to unorthodox issues. That being said, with the growth of AI and machine learning, you could definitely create a system that is able to use a collection of pre-designed assets and then create custom items to fit given requests from a player. The only issue here is that you then have to limit the list of creations or risk the game being very easily broken by player ingenuity, and not in a good way. The final method is really the one I chose to center my ideas around, incorporating some of the other options into it on top, and that is customizable presets. So initially I viewed this as you have a list of what are effectively different skins to put over your constructs, but they all do the same thing. But now I see it a little differently. I present to you what I call the think tank system. Littered throughout the game would be resting points where you can recharge your lantern battery. Whilst at these locations, you can also enter your lantern's creative mind. We'd come up with a cool name for it, wouldn't be that, but you know what I mean. This would be presented in a similar way to the garage in LEGO 2K Drive, if you've played that game. Here, you would have the ability to create, using specifically designed model builder, new constructs. These constructs are near limitless in potential, the game giving you unique pieces to build with, and some pieces would even give your constructs unique properties. When you're done building it, you can then apply a set number of tags to it. These tags determine how it interacts when summoned, whether it's gear, a melee weapon, an object, or a ranged weapon. Then, there would be subtags that determine the types within those categories they fall into. From here, like I said, you can have things like buzzsaws as a building material, and if it's attached to a construct, it gives that weapon the property to cut through armor, or maybe a ballistic missile head that gives projectiles explosive properties. I don't have specifics, but you kind of get the gist with how this sort of building system would work. From here, you can lock certain types of constructs and certain building materials behind main missions and side missions. I love the idea of each famous lantern getting a designated side mission in the game that, if completed, gives you presets for their iconic constructs as well as the components used to make them. HAL letting you summon tiny fighter jets, And then maybe that means that you can give your projectiles a feature where on explosion, they then send off mini rockets or something. And John gives you the minigun, and this is how you can give ranged attacks rapid fire or something. And Guy gives you a big hand, and this means that you can grapple with ranged attacks. I think all of those could be super fun. Then, when you make these constructs, you can assign them to one of 4 stances. Each stance has a melee construct slot, a ranged construct slot, and a parry construct. You can get creative with this, from baseball bats to rocket-powered giant sledgehammers, from miniguns to claw grabbers, from Captain America-style shields to full body armor. The options for each category is only limited by the player's creativity. I can also picture like you can choose from a list of preset poses or quote-unquote fighting styles for each of your stances, so that your character looks like they're using the construct properly. Obviously that would be the most limited list of options because we want to give the most amount of assets to our actual construct builder system. And for those without the talent or the time to create custom constructs, the game would have a generic construct preset list available and a downloadable construct list. Basically, when you make a construct, you'd be able to upload it to a server on the game where it gets checked before it's uploaded, whether that's by bots or whether it's by actual people checking it. That's up to the game and how much money and time they want to put into it. But then it goes on to a public domain space where players can download each other's constructs, and it builds a sense of community. That could be super fun as well. Those who are super artsy can get to creating constructs of iconic DC comic book moments. And as for the more cinematic constructs, well, they come in when you unlock a new building material or a construct type. When doing that, you'll create a construct for the first time that's pre-designed and shows off the new feature in all its glory. After doing so, the game will then ask you or prompt you if you want to keep the preset design or immediately customize it. Imagine all the possibilities. I really like the idea of being able to pick a passive ability effect personally, and having a miniature construct that sits on your character's model to represent that passive ability, meaning players can choose from making a cool little badge to some shoulder pauldrons to even a cute little pet. And then the reason why earlier I mentioned Kyle Rayner being a good option as your base Green Lantern all sort of wraps around in the themes we've covered here. He's an artist, so that means that we can implement him into the game and have his training stations and his construct designs be centered around his, let's say, his art studio or something. And then it means that if we go into sequels in the future, we can implement unique lantern effects based on each lantern. And while Kyle Rayner, for those of you who don't know, is the only Green Lantern to have wielded all the Green Lantern rings, letting the player eventually get to use them. Of course, if you don't do Kyle Rayner, I can just see the sequels letting the player pick different lantern cores. That could also be super fun. Alright, that's just about all I've got for the idea, but how would you handle a Green Lantern game? Would it be the same? Let me know. And make sure to follow us on all the socials, press the like button if you enjoyed it, and tune in next week for the return of our Marvel Rival videos.